It's a typical Tuesday morning in California. The sun shines brightly over the bustling streets, but in one unsuspecting neighborhood, something is about to shatter the calm. Inside a quiet bank, a heavily armed figure steps into the vault, his mask dark and foreboding as his cold eyes scan the room. No one knows who he is. No one knows how he got in or what he plans to do next. This isn't just any robber. This is someone who has haunted the nightmares of the state's law enforcement for months. California's scariest bank robber is on the loose. The question is, can they stop him before he strikes again? The story of this ruthless criminal, known only by the alias, the Phantom Bandit, is one that has shocked California. This man, or woman, depending on the theories, is responsible for a series of bank robberies stretching across several major cities, leaving behind not just a trail of stolen money, but also a wave of terror. His crimes are so daring, so meticulous, that the police are left baffled at each turn. But what makes this case even more chilling is the robber's ability to disappear without a trace, slipping through the fingers of law enforcement time and time again. Each robbery, perfectly executed with no evidence, no witnesses, just a feeling of fear that lingers long after the dust settles. The questions you would be pondering are, who is this masked criminal? What drives him to commit such cold-blooded, calculated crimes? How is he always one step ahead of the law? And most importantly, why is he considered California's scariest bank robber? If you can answer any of these, wait till the end to earn a prize. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as you listen to the next twist. The first robbery took place on a cold autumn morning in the heart of Los Angeles. It was a perfectly planned heist. The Phantom Bandit, masked and armed, entered a local bank during peak hours. But there was no chaos, no shouting, no violence, just calm precision. He moved swiftly, methodically, like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. What baffled the authorities was that the surveillance cameras, for reasons unknown, had been disabled minutes before the robbery occurred. Not a single photo or video of the bandit. The only thing left behind was a cryptic message written on a napkin: "You'll never catch me." As the weeks went by, more robberies followed, each one identical in execution. The bandit would rob the banks during the day, often while the staff and customers were in plain sight, but he always took great care to avoid confrontation. The police had no leads, no fingerprints, no witness descriptions, and no clear pattern to follow. But one thing was clear. He was getting bolder. As the robberies piled up, the public began to feel the weight of fear pressing in. Bank employees, once calm in their day-to-day jobs, were now on edge. Every morning they walked into work wondering if this would be the day the Phantom Bandit struck. The local news began to run reports on his signature moves, how he always arrived in a nondescript car, wore gloves, and always had an escape plan that was flawless. Parents began to warn their children about the Phantom Bandit, asking them to stay away from the bank area. For the first time in years, a shadow of anxiety began to hang over communities. No one knew when the next robbery would happen, or if it was already too late to stop the bandit. As the robber's reputation grew, so did his terror. His ability to evade law enforcement made him seem like a ghost, an invincible figure who was above the reach of the law. The fear wasn't just about money being stolen. It was about the constant question, who is he? Where will he strike next? The police were left with little more than theories. They'd already tried every approach, stakeouts, undercover agents, and profiling, but nothing seemed to work. They were dealing with a criminal mastermind who always stayed one step ahead. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former FBI agent turned private investigator, Michael Callahan. Callahan had worked on some of California's most notorious cases and had developed a reputation for his unorthodox methods. His approach was different. He didn't just focus on the heist itself, but looked at the broader context, the behavior, the psychology, and the potential connections. Callahan began his investigation by studying the previous robberies and looking for something others had missed, a pattern not just in the heists, but in the victims. It was then that he discovered something chilling. The Phantom Bandit wasn't after money alone. His target banks were all in neighborhoods that had once been home to significant criminal activity. Could it be that the bandit was targeting institutions tied to a larger, more intricate criminal syndicate? Callahan's theory began to take hold, and he brought it to the police. Together, they launched a covert investigation, diving deeper into the criminal landscape of California, tracing any connections the robber might have to gangs, syndicates, and old rivalries. The investigation intensified as new evidence came to light. With every robbery, the Phantom Bandit was leaving cryptic clues, a message scrawled on the walls, a specific type of banknote left behind. Could these be messages meant to mislead, or were they warnings? It became clear that this was no ordinary criminal. This was a man or woman who knew how to play the game, staying 2 steps ahead of the law while leaving just enough of a trail to tantalize investigators. In one critical moment, a slip-up occurred. After the robbery of a well-known downtown bank, a single item was found near the getaway car, a pair of designer sunglasses, more expensive than any average robber would wear. A simple mistake, but one that would eventually crack the case wide open. The sunglasses were traced back to a rare brand, and an unexpected connection led investigators to an upscale area of Los Angeles. Here's where the story truly takes off. The revelation was shocking. Could the Phantom Bandit actually have ties to one of California's most notorious and secretive families? The investigation would soon uncover a series of high-stakes family connections, illicit deals, and dangerous figures who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. The investigation continued with higher stakes and tension building as law enforcement and private investigators alike dove deeper into the web of crime, corruption, and danger. How far would they have to go to uncover the true identity of the Phantom Bandit? And how far would the robber go to protect his secrets? The final robbery, the one that would end it all, would occur on the night before the bandit was set to be caught. A massive showdown was looming. But would the bandit escape once again? Or was this the moment where everything would unravel? If you want to know how this heart-stopping story unfolds, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The hunt is not over. Stay tuned because California's scariest bank robber may still be out there. The investigation had hit a plateau. For weeks, law enforcement, led by private investigator Michael Callahan, had been circling the case like sharks in murky waters. But the Phantom Bandit had remained elusive. Every theory, every clue had been tested, but the robber had proven to be nothing short of a ghost, an enigma that danced on the edges of every attempt to capture him. But then, a breakthrough. In an unexpected twist, a local news station in Los Angeles aired a strange broadcast. A dark, grainy security camera clip surfaced online, allegedly showing the Phantom Bandit entering a bank on the outskirts of the city. The footage was shaky, but the figure, tall, menacing, with a signature black mask, was unmistakable. Yet it wasn't just the robber that grabbed everyone's attention. As the camera zoomed out slightly, something chilling was visible on the counter. A handwritten note that read, "Next stop, your worst nightmare." The cryptic message sent shockwaves through the entire investigative team. Could it be that the bandit was now toying with them? But more importantly, what was the hidden message behind his note? It wasn't just a robbery anymore. It was a warning, and it seemed to have a personal undertone. Michael Callahan and the law enforcement agencies began to dig deeper into the note. At first, they thought it might be another dead-end clue, just an eerie taunt meant to throw them off course. But then, Callahan remembered something. Something he hadn't thought about before. During his early investigation, he noticed patterns in the Phantom Bandits' choice of targets. They weren't random at all. Each bank robbed had ties to a larger financial system, a link to the wealthiest clients, and sometimes shady underworld dealings. There were subtle connections to high-profile families, businesses, and even politicians. What if the robber wasn't after money alone? What if he was trying to send a deeper, more personal message to these power brokers? Callahan couldn't shake the thought. What if the Phantom Bandit was more than just a criminal? What if he was a revolutionary, a man on a mission to expose the underbelly of California's most powerful elites? The search ramped up as the bandit's crimes became more brazen. He no longer limited his heists to banks. The Phantom Bandit started hitting financial institutions, insurance companies, private vaults, and even gold dealers. Each time, he employed his signature moves, calculated precision, no casualties, a cold, methodical approach. It became clear. The bandit was not just about stealing money, but about shattering the system. The stakes were growing higher. The police had a renewed sense of urgency. California's most dangerous criminal wasn't just a common robber. He was a criminal mastermind with a message, and he wasn't afraid to raise the stakes with each heist. But as the investigation progressed, there were unsettling signs that something darker was at play. After every robbery, someone would always be left behind. A victim whose life had been shattered. The employees, those who had witnessed the robber's eerie calm and chilling eyes, began to experience strange things. Dreams of the bandit, nightmares, and some even claimed they felt watched long after the robber had vanished. The Phantom Bandit had become more than a criminal. He had become a symbol. The media quickly turned him into an icon. Some people in the public started to sympathize with him, seeing his actions as a rebellion against the system that oppressed the common man. The robber with a cause became a rallying cry for those who had lost faith in the system. Protests erupted in several cities, with citizens wearing masks similar to the Phantom Bandits, calling for social change. It was a wave of public support that baffled the authorities. Was the robber truly a villain? Or was he a hero to some?
The FBI's cyber division took the case to another level. They combed through digital records looking for any traces of the robber's online footprint. It was here that they found something curious. A series of encrypted messages embedded in photos and videos posted by the bandit on social media. These weren't just selfies with piles of money or cryptic notes. Some of the photos contained hidden messages, coded in the background, relating to certain dates, locations, and businesses. With each new piece of evidence, Callahan and the police realized something disturbing. The Phantom Bandit was controlling the narrative. He was not just evading capture, he was actively orchestrating events, manipulating the public, and turning the hunt into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The most dangerous thing about the Phantom Bandit wasn't just his ability to outsmart the police, it was his unpredictability. And in a deadly turn of events, the Phantom Bandit made his first mistake. During one of his heists, something went wrong. As he was exiting a vault, he made eye contact with a security guard, a young man who wasn't supposed to be on duty that day. For a split second, there was hesitation. The robber didn't react immediately, but in that brief moment, the guard made a desperate move. He grabbed the phone from his pocket and silently texted a colleague, signaling for help. The Phantom Bandit's reaction was swift. He knew his cover was about to be blown, but this was no typical criminal. He didn't kill the guard. Instead, in a move that would puzzle investigators for days, he offered him a chilling deal. Stay quiet, and you'll leave here alive. Cross me, and the next person you see will be in your place. The guard didn't flinch. His heart raced, but the Phantom Bandit had already vanished. The authorities arrived minutes too late, and when they questioned the young guard, he insisted that he hadn't seen the bandit's face. He couldn't describe him. This mistake, the first sign of vulnerability, didn't go unnoticed. It was the opening law enforcement needed. Callahan had never been closer to solving the case.
His investigation into the bandits' patterns, the hidden messages, and the digital breadcrumbs pointed to a terrifying possibility. The Phantom Bandit was no longer just a nameless force. The pieces were aligning, and Callahan was beginning to suspect that the robber had a personal vendetta. Callahan discovered a connection between the bandit and a now-deceased criminal mastermind. Victor Cruz, an ex-mob boss, had vanished years earlier after a failed escape attempt from a federal penitentiary. It was rumored that Cruz had been the leader of an underground syndicate, and his disappearance was believed to be tied to a multi-million-dollar heist that was never solved. But what if Cruz had faked his death, only to resurface as the Phantom Bandit? The name began to circulate among a select few. Victor Cruz, the missing mob boss, might be the bandit, but how could he have orchestrated such a daring and audacious plan, working right under their noses for months? How had he escaped the authorities' radar for all this time? As Callahan dug deeper into Cruz's old network, the story unraveled further. Cruz had connections to many high-ranking figures in California. Powerful elites, law enforcement, and even those in politics all had ties to Cruz's criminal empire. Could this be why the Phantom Bandit was so hard to catch? The walls were closing in. In one final, breathtaking turn of events, Callahan received a tip-off that the Phantom Bandit was about to strike one last time at a private fundraiser for California's richest and most influential figures. This event was a gathering of the state's political elite, and the Phantom Bandit had orchestrated his most daring heist yet, to expose the corruption at the heart of California's power structure. With the date set, the stage was set for the final showdown. Would Callahan and his team manage to catch the Phantom Bandit before he disappeared again, or was this the moment where the robber would truly claim victory? As the night of the fundraiser approached, tensions ran high. Law enforcement was prepared, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something even darker was afoot. The Phantom Bandit had one last card to play, and Callahan was determined to stop him before it was too late. Would this be the end of the road for California's most wanted robber, or would the final heist be the bandit's greatest escape yet? Stay tuned as we unravel further. Ensure you are subscribed to the channel as we probe even further into this story of California's scariest bank robber. The night is thick with tension. Inside a dimly lit mansion, a secretive gathering is taking place. Wealthy elites and political figures mingle, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. The Phantom Bandit is about to strike, but this time the stakes are higher than ever. This is not just a robbery, it's an explosion of chaos that will shatter the very foundations of California's political landscape. In the shadows, law enforcement is in position, waiting for the moment when the Phantom Bandit makes his move. But no one knows the true scope of what's about to unfold. Would this be the end of the trail? Or will the Phantom Bandit make a daring escape once again? As California's elite gather in an exclusive mansion high on a hill overlooking the city, no one suspects that one of their own is about to be exposed. The Phantom Bandit had carefully planned every detail of this heist. He knew that this wasn't just about money, it was about power. For weeks, private investigator Michael Callahan had been working tirelessly, connecting the dots and piecing together the mystery of the bandit's identity. After following the cryptic digital breadcrumbs left behind by the robber, Callahan had uncovered the truth. The Phantom Bandit wasn't just a criminal mastermind. He was out to destroy everything the rich and powerful had built. This heist was going to be different. There would be no money stolen, no bank vaults broken into, no security alarms tripped. The Phantom Bandit was going for something much bigger, the destruction of California's most influential families. Why was the Phantom Bandit targeting California's elite? What did he know about them that no one else did? How had he infiltrated their most secure spaces without detection? And, most chillingly, could this be the beginning of something even more dangerous, an uprising that would sweep across the state? The stage was set for the heist. The mansion was filled with political figures, business moguls, and the power brokers who controlled California's wealth. But what no one knew was that the Phantom Bandit had already slipped inside. For weeks, he had been following the lives of the people in this room, studying their every move. He had learned their secrets, the dark corners of their empire, the unspeakable deals they'd made under the table, and now it was time for the Phantom Bandit to expose it all. The first sign of trouble came when the mansion's power flickered. At first, guests assumed it was a minor glitch, but as the lights dimmed and the music stuttered to a halt, a cold silence filled the room. Then a voice echoed from the darkness. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your reckoning." The Phantom Bandit had arrived. His voice sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the room. It wasn't just a man, they realized. It was a symbol, a force of retribution. The wealth they had accumulated, the deals they had made at the expense of others, were about to be exposed. The bandit's plan was simple, but devastating. He had positioned cameras throughout the mansion, capturing every conversation, every shady deal, and now he was broadcasting it all live, directly to every news outlet in the state. As the images of corruption and betrayal flooded the screens, panic began to spread. Guests frantically scrambled to shut off their devices, but it was too late. The Phantom Bandit had already made his point. He wasn't just out for money, he was out for justice. California's elite were now at the mercy of the very people they had trampled on for years. The Phantom Bandit wasn't just a criminal. He was the embodiment of everything they feared. The faces of the powerful figures, once untouchable, turned pale with fear as they realized what was happening. For Callahan, the stakes had never been higher. He had followed the Phantom Bandit's trail to this mansion, knowing that the truth was close, but he had underestimated just how far the bandit was willing to go. This wasn't just a robbery, it was a reckoning. As the broadcast continued, the bandit's plan unfolded with terrifying clarity. He hadn't just infiltrated the mansion, he had infiltrated the very heart of California's corruption. The names that flashed on the screen were the names of those who had manipulated the system for years. Senators, business moguls, even police chiefs. Their dirty secrets were now in the hands of the Phantom Bandit, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. The fear in the room was palpable. Guests began to panic. Some tried to flee, but the mansion's gates were locked. The Phantom Bandit was already in control, and no one could escape. It was in this moment of utter chaos that Callahan made his move. He knew that the bandit was in the building. He could feel it. But the deeper he went into the mansion, the more he realized just how dangerous this situation had become. The bandit was playing a much larger game than anyone had anticipated. It wasn't just about exposing corruption, it was about taking down the entire system. As Callahan reached the central hallway, the mansion seemed eerily quiet. The lights flickered again, and then the sound of a door creaking open broke the silence. He stepped inside, and there, standing in front of him, was the Phantom Bandit. But this time, something was different. The figure was no longer wearing the black mask. The bandit's face, the face of Victor Cruz, was revealed. Callahan froze. The notorious mob boss, believed to be dead for years, was standing in front of him, smirking. Cruz had orchestrated this entire event not just to rob, but to bring down California's elite. He had learned their darkest secrets, and now he was using those secrets as leverage to dismantle their empire. "You thought I was gone," Cruz said, his voice cold. "But I never left. I just bided my time, until the moment was right." Suddenly, the air shifted. Callahan realized that there was more at play here than just a single mastermind. Cruz wasn't alone. Behind him, emerging from the shadows, were several other familiar faces. High-ranking politicians, powerful businessmen, even law enforcement officers, all of whom had once been loyal to the system but now stood beside Cruz. They were all part of a secretive cabal, one that had been operating in the shadows for decades. Cruz had been building an underground empire, manipulating both sides of the law for years. The Phantom Bandit, it turned out, was just the tip of the iceberg. "What you've seen tonight," Cruz said with a wicked smile, "is just the beginning. I'm gonna burn this entire city to the ground." The weight of the revelation hit Callahan like a freight train. He was standing in the middle of an operation far larger than he could have imagined. But with the stakes so high, Callahan had no choice but to take action. He knew this was the final moment. the last chance to stop Cruz and his criminal syndicate from executing their plan. But just as he prepared to make his move, Cruz's eyes glinted with a dangerous confidence. "You're too late," Cruz whispered. "I've already won." The lights in the mansion suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness. A blaring alarm echoed through the halls. The ground shook and an explosion rang out in the distance. Was it an attack? Or was it Cruz's final play to ensure his victory? Callahan's heart raced as he heard footsteps closing in. Time was running out. Would he be able to stop Cruz and his syndicate before they unleashed chaos on the city? Or had the Phantom Bandit already won? The mansion shook violently, the walls reverberating with the deafening sound of an explosion. Smoke filled the air as darkness descended on the scene. The tension was so thick you could almost feel it. Callahan's heart was racing as he tried to make sense of the chaos. For a brief moment, he was disoriented, but then, out of the shadows, the Phantom Bandit, Victor Cruz, stepped forward. His usual confidence had turned into something even more sinister, a twisted calmness as he looked around the room. "You're too late, Callahan," Cruz said, his voice cold and mocking. "This was never about the bank robbery. This was about control. And now, I have it." But just as Cruz spoke, something unexpected happened. The sound of a second explosion erupted. This time it wasn't from the outside. It was as if the entire mansion was shaking under the weight of the revelation about to unfold. Everyone inside, the elite, the corrupt politicians, and even Callahan felt a shiver of fear crawling up their spines. For months, Callahan had been chasing a ghost, a criminal mastermind who appeared invincible. The more he uncovered, the clearer it became that the Phantom Bandit was not a simple robber. He wasn't just a thief, he was someone beyond the system. Someone who had watched the state's most powerful elites from the shadows, learning their weaknesses, their secrets, and their flaws. But what Callahan had just uncovered was far beyond his wildest imagination. Cruz wasn't the real Phantom Bandit, at least not entirely. He was the puppet, the face of the operation, controlled by something far darker. In the midst of all the confusion, Callahan had noticed something. The signature skull ring that Cruz had worn for years wasn't just an accessory. It wasn't just a symbol of the mob boss's power. No, it was a signal, a clue. This ring was the same ring worn by a shadowy figure who had been working in the background of every robbery. A figure Callahan had heard whispers of, a name that had been feared but never truly. This ring was the same ring worn by a shadowy figure who had been working in the background of every robbery. A figure Callahan had heard whispers of, a name that had been feared but never truly confirmed. Callahan's thoughts raced, piecing the puzzle together. He had seen the ring on Cruz, but then he remembered the crucial detail from his earlier investigation. A silhouette from one of the previous robberies, a figure who appeared to look like Cruz but wasn't Cruz. The figure had moved in a way that was far too precise, too methodical for Cruz. The movements were calculated, deliberate. Something else was at play here. It dawned on him. Cruz wasn't in control of this operation. He was being manipulated. The true Phantom Bandit was someone else entirely. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A voice, not Cruz's, crackled through the room's loudspeakers, cold and calm. "I see you figured it out, Callahan," the voice purred. "But you still don't understand the full picture, do you?" A sudden chill ran down Callahan's spine as he turned toward the source of the voice. The Phantom Bandit wasn't just playing a game of revenge, it was something far more dangerous. The voice belonged to someone he least expected. It was Elena Cruz, Victor Cruz's own daughter. Callahan's eyes widened in disbelief. Elena Cruz had been a silent partner in her father's operation all along, but she wasn't just involved in the family business. She had been working undercover, building her own empire inside the very system she was trying to dismantle. "I've been watching them all," Elena's voice echoed through the mansion. "The ones who thought they were above the law, the ones who used their power for greed and corruption. My father was always in the spotlight, but it's time for a change. I've built an army of loyal followers, and together we will take this system down." Victor Cruz, realizing the gravity of the situation, stammered, "Elena, this wasn't supposed to happen like this." But Elena wasn't listening. Her plan was already in motion. She had orchestrated every robbery, every escape, and every cryptic message, all leading to this moment. Victor Cruz had been her pawn in the grand scheme of things, a distraction. The bandit wasn't just some petty thief. Elena Cruz had set her sights on a total collapse of the California elite. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook again, this time more violently. It wasn't another explosion. It was the sound of a massive underground vault opening. Elena had made her final move. The mansion, with its walls filled with secrets, was sinking. It was the final trap she had set, a dramatic finale to her rebellion. But Callahan wasn't about to let it end like this. As the building creaked and groaned, he grabbed Cruz and dragged him toward an exit. But Elena stopped him.
"You think you can escape this?" she said, her voice laced with dark amusement. "This building, this operation, it's already over, Callahan. And when it all crumbles, it won't be me who's caught. It will be everyone else. Because I've been playing this game from the inside. I know every move they'll make, every secret they'll try to hide." With a final push, she turned to the control panel and pressed a button, signaling the final collapse of the mansion's infrastructure. The air was thick with tension as the walls caved in and the floor buckled beneath their feet. The last thing Callahan saw before everything went dark was Elena's silhouette, standing tall amidst the chaos as the walls closed in around them. When the authorities arrived, the mansion was in ruins, but there was no trace of Elena Cruz. No body, no sign of her ever existing in the first place. The only remnants left behind were the records of the stolen money, the countless secrets exposed, and the utter destruction of the California elite's stronghold. And in the rubble, Victor Cruz was found unconscious, his ring, the symbol of his fall, still on his finger. But Elena Cruz? She had vanished. No one knew if she had escaped or if she had disappeared into the shadows forever, leaving behind nothing but questions. As Callahan sat alone in his office weeks later reviewing the aftermath of the disaster, one last detail caught his eye. A package had been left on his doorstep, addressed to him. Inside, he found a single photograph, a picture of Elena Cruz standing on top of a massive skyscraper overlooking the city, holding a briefcase in her hand. The note inside read, "This isn't over, Callahan. The real game has just begun." The truth was still out there, hidden in plain sight. And the man who once thought he had all the answers was now left with one final question. Was Elena Cruz really gone? Or was this just the beginning of a new, more dangerous game? To be continued. If you thought this story had a thrilling conclusion, just wait. There's so much more to uncover. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to Elena Cruz? Is the Phantom Bandit truly gone? Or is the next phase of this chaotic saga just getting started? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the mystery is far from over.